Yo, what's poppin', y'all? It's Brother Front back at it with another Nikke video. With the recent release of Winter Bread or Bread Silent Track now finally in the game, I feel like now would be a great time to put out this video where if you're a newer player and you're not privy to what's to come in the game, after this update we are expecting to receive the New Year's update, and with that update comes a brand new broken 1% character to summon for, on top of a rerun for an already broken character with Rapi Red Hood. And so, as a newer player, it's obviously going to be pretty hard, right, to decide whether or not you should be spending your pulls for the current winter pickups, since they are limited. You can't get them any time of the year, as opposed to other characters like the New Year's characters. But having said that, I want to make this video as a opinion-based. Should you summon for any of the current limited pickups, or if you should be saving your pulls for the New Year's characters. That being said, if you enjoy content like this on the channel and want to see more of it, feel free to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Helps out the channel a ton as always. With that being said, getting into this, I think I'm going to make this as fair and objective as possible by giving my opinions from the perspective of two different types of players. The first one being newer players, anyone that's played the game or came to the game in less than 6 months' time. Then the other perspective will be for seasoned/veteran players that have had their account up for longer than a year. Because I feel like depending on what the state of your account is in, is ultimately going to decide whether or not these might be worth going for in terms of the winter characters. Starting off, to do a quick TLDR for the newer players, at the end of the day, it really just comes down to your amount of resources for summoning. If you don't have a lot of currency to go for any of these characters, I would just say skip them all outright and just save your currency for New Year's, because again, those characters are both going to be extremely broken. One's already extremely broken, but the new one is sure to be just as good, if not somehow better. And then as for the older players, it's really just going to come down to whatever you're lacking on your account. If you're lacking options for fire, you can definitely go for Bread or Diesel, or both. If you're lacking an option for electric, Maiden would be pretty good as well. Winter Guillotine, whether you're a new player or veteran player, or you just want her for the collection's sake, is not worth going for, and I'll explain a little bit why later on. But as for a more detailed explanation for newer players, now again, I'm assuming for newer players, if you're still watching at this point because you didn't decide to just click off the video after I told you not to summon because you don't have enough currency, at this point in time I'm assuming you have at the very least enough currency to go for one of these banners, or have enough pulls to get you to 200 golden mileage before the New Year's event is live. Out of the four, who should you go for? I'd say the one that would give you the most mileage on your account will probably be Winter Maiden, followed by Diesel, then Brid, and then lastly again, Guillotine, not worth really getting into. Now, explaining why I think Maiden's the top pick out of the four, is simply for the fact that as a electric character, she provides so much for electric units that honestly, I think she's going to have so much longevity that there's probably not going to be anyone to replace her for a very long time. And even if we get people that do the same functions as her, she's still going to be seen for a long time, simply because of her skill 2, which is something that not many Nikkes in the game have, which is the ability to buff elemental damage. So as you can see in her skill 2, Blessings Upon You, for both Electric Code allies as well as herself, she gives a elemental damage bonus, which again, a lot of characters in the game don't have that. There's not many characters that have an elemental damage buff, so that alone already puts Maiden at a pretty high position on my list of winter characters. So of course for Electric Week content, very prevalent, you're going to see her quite a ton, and the good thing about Maiden, another reason why she'd be a good pick as a new player, is because you have the ability to use her both on burst and off burst, right? And she pretty much has pretty consistent damage no matter how you play her. So when it comes to using her on burst, the way her mechanic works, her signature mechanic, which is her MP, when you're entering the burst stage 1, she gains 1 stack of MP for a max stack of 12, and whenever you use her burst skill, Diamond Dust, she spends all of her MP to deal a percentage of damage times the number of hits based on your MP count, right? So for example, if you had max stacks of 12, I'll be able to do 13,000 percent of damage 12 times, essentially, right? So because of that, if you're using her on burst, she's not going to have max stacks of MP. She's really only going to be able to burst mainly with 2 stacks. But again, the way they structured her to have her kind of scale, it comes out to be relatively even, depending on your level of investment on the character, whether you use her on burst or off burst. But obviously, if you're not using her on burst and using her as an off burst, you'll be able to get to your max stack of 12. Then you use her burst skill as like the second to last full burst rotation to deal as much damage with her burst as possible. But not only is she good for electric weak content, of course, but she's also very good for Elysian Tower. If you're struggling in Elysian Tower, since she's a rocket launcher and she has really good burst generation, you could use her at the very least as a battery, because again, if you're not using her in Elysian Tower against electric weak stages, then these buffs are pretty much meaningless, and as well as her, own personal damage will suffer a bit as well in neutral. But despite that, again, just having a simple battery that can help you get to your full burst rotations faster and allow your other DPSs that are more invested into deal more damage quicker could be the difference maker between you clearing a high deficit Elysian Tower stage or not. So just the ability to be used on element, of course, for electric weak content, mainly raids, as well as being able to be used as a battery for Elysian Tower and just other areas of the game, right? If you're just desperate for a battery in general, she's a very good character for that, and I think that's why I put her as the first place on my list for new characters. And she also doesn't require as much investment, right? If you're using her off burst, you don't really got to focus on her burst too much, unless you, of course, want to see her do as much damage as you can, at the end of the run when you're using her the second last burst rotation. But if you don't plan to use her burst at all, just using her for her skill 2 and getting that, up to at least skill level 7 would be pretty worthwhile. Now, when it comes to Diesel and Brid, again, I definitely don't see them being used as much in neutral options, which is why I don't really recommend them as highly as Maiden for newer players. For Diesel in particular, while she can be used more often than Brid in terms of neutral situations because her sustained damage buffs are so high from her skill 1 and skill 2 that she's able to do pretty good damage even in neutral, similar to someone like Overspec Miara. The main reason why she kind of falls off in neutral situations is because the fact that her damage taken debuff is tied specifically to her burst skill, right? So you need to burst with this character in order to get this debuff, and because of that, it pretty much comes down to, as a newer player, if you think she would be stronger than any of your already current OP characters on your account that can perform well even in neutral situations, if they can perform as good if not better than Diesel, there's really no reason to go for Diesel, at least use her in terms of neutral situations, and she pretty much should be mainly used for fire weak content. But if your other options for DPSs can't do as much damage as her in neutral, or even on element for whatever reason, then Diesel will definitely be pretty good for neutral situations, but it does require heavy investment, which as a newer player will be pretty hard to do, especially if you already have a lot of characters you're trying to invest into, let alone the New Year's characters, which definitely will both want a lot of investment as well, or at least will definitely appreciate heavy investment, even if they don't necessarily need it. As for Brid, she would be better than Diesel in terms of neutral situations if her skill 1 and skill 2 with her damage taken debuffs weren't tied specifically to wind code enemies. Since they are elemental specific, it pretty much hinders her ability to be used in neutral. The only thing you're really getting from using her in neutral situations is, of course, her burst skill, which gives a pretty big caster's attack buff to the entire team. If you're really stressed out for a lot of buffers on your account, then Brid could be useful for her burst skill alone, but again, missing out on damage taken when there's other characters in the game for burst 2 that can effectively buff as good, if not better, and just provide more than Brid. Again, as a newer player, I don't think it would be worth really going for off the rip. At least when it comes to reruns, we do know that Brid and Diesel, since they are this year's winter characters, will be reran next year with the new winter characters for next year. As for someone like Maiden and Guillotine that are rerunning this year because they came out last year, you most likely won't be seeing them rerun next year, seeing as for their banners, none of the previous winter characters like Rapi, Anne, Ludmilla, and Nikke are featured. So again, as a newer player, it would be technically worth more, or at least a little bit more worthwhile, to get Maiden right now because she probably won't rerun next year. Whereas for these two characters, Diesel and Brid, you can skip out on them this year, then pull for them next year when you have a more fleshed out account and have more resources to be able to actually invest into them properly, because if you're not giving them a decent amount of investment, they're probably not going to be worth really picking up as a newer player, as opposed to using just your other strong DPS options that can do as well in neutral, because they are heavily invested into. Now, getting into it for the veteran players, again, it really just comes down to what you might be lacking if you're lacking options for Fire Week content, I would say getting a copy of Brid and Diesel would be worthwhile, because they, when invested into, can perform very well. Now, assuming, obviously, when I say you're missing out on options you don't have, for example, like Evangelion 1.0, maybe your Alice isn't properly invested into enough to be able to use her for raids, maybe you're missing out on Red Hood Rapi, or even, Overspec Mihara. In that case, definitely getting a copy of one of these two, or both of them, would be worthwhile for Fire Week, because I do feel like they'll have a decent amount of longevity until we get more Fire characters. Again, since if you don't have Evangelion 1.0, it's pretty much an entire team comp that you can't pretty much make for Fire, so these two characters could fill in those spots, or fill up two different spots for two different teams, depending on how you build your teams for raids. And then for Maiden, if you're again missing out on an option for Electric Week content, Maiden is pretty much a go-to. Again, still used to this day, will pretty much be used until the end of time, again because of her skill 2 alone, being able to buff elemental damage. There's not really going to be anyone that can overtake her place anytime soon until we get more characters that buff elemental damage. And even if we do, until we get enough characters to be able to put one on every single team on element, then again, Maiden's pretty much going to see longevity for the far, far future. So again, as a veteran, going for one copy of each of these three characters will be very useful for you, assuming you're lacking on options for those elements. Now let's say you already have Maiden, and you already have a lot of options for Fire, and you're just looking to see for Brid and Diesel in particular. Kind of similar to the new players, it's really going to depend on how strong your neutral DPS options are, right? If you feel like you already have decent investment on your neutral DPSs, and that it can perform well enough for you to get whatever rank you want, for example, solo raid, then Brid and Diesel are pretty much nothing more than either potential upgrades or even side grades to what you already have. For example, if you already have like the Absolute Trio, the Tactical Upgrade Trio invested into, these two could be a substitution for them. But again, if you're already invested into them, there's really no reason to go out of your way to invest in these characters right away. Now, when it comes to the shotgun team, for Brid specifically, I definitely think that's where her best position is going to be in. When I did my own testing with Brid, because I'm pretty much recording this a little bit after I did some testing with Brid, I did see her perform the best in terms of DPS wise on the shotgun team compared to a non-shotgun team, obviously because the shotgun comp heavily favors shotgun units. So if you plan to use her, or at least Brid, in terms of a sub DPS slash buffer, you definitely want to use her on a shotgun comp and then have Diesel on a different team. Other than that, again, if you feel like there'll be enough of an upgrade for your account, one copy should be more than enough for you. If you feel like you're a little bit low on summons or a little bit low on skill upgrades, and you are looking to see if they're like a just downright tremendous upgrade from what you might already have, I definitely don't think they will be, but they will still be useful enough to definitely see some use for a while in Fire Week content. That's pretty much going to do for this video. To give a quick summarization, for the newer players, if you don't have enough currency to go for any of these characters, skip all of them and just say what you have for New Year's. But if you are able to at least accrue enough golden mileage to get one copy of the New Year's characters, then go for Maiden first, and then follow up with Diesel and Brid, get a copy of each, if you can. If not, then probably just go for Maiden, and then skip Brid and Diesel this year, and then try to get them next year. As for the veteran players, it really just comes down to what you're missing. So if you're missing options for Fire, a copy of Brid and Diesel will be good. If you're missing options for Electric, a copy of Maiden will be good. But if you have options for all of those, then it really just comes down to if you feel like Brid and Diesel offer enough of a benefit. If you're a more competitive player, if you're a heavily competitive player for raids, then getting a copy of both of them would be good. If you're not that competitive and you feel like you can do decent enough with what you already have, then it's fine to skip out on these two as well. But with that being said, that's going to do it for this video. Again, if you guys enjoy this type of content with these Shoji summons, let me know down in the comments below, and I'll be sure to do some more, especially once we get New Year's and the new New Year's character. It'll be definitely pretty good to see, because I'm sure I'll obviously list both of them as must summons. But with that being said, it's Brother Frona, and I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace out, y'all.